Thank you very much for tuning in. So I'd just like to say straight away, this is going to be I'm going to be doing one video a week, a roundup of what's been going on my channel, various issues, etc. I think that, if you've got 30 minutes to spare, then, um, if you're working or doing some kind of job and you can listen to this at the same time, it's probably the best way to do it rather than devote 30 minutes of your time to listening to me talk about my channel. But whatever you want to do, I do think it's going to be interesting. But of course, I would say that, wouldn't I? So, yeah, the last week, first of all, let me just say that the Line have put out an 8-hour compilation of calls. I was quite excited initially when I saw this. Well, I say excited, I mean relatively so. When I saw that they'd done this, and I started watching. The first call is a very good one with Matt, and one that I'm going to cover. Oh yeah, it was a good one, actually, a very good one. I love it when a liberal Christian phones in, particularly LGBT Christian, queer Christian calls in for a nice cozy chat with Matt and a sort of bridge building kind of thing. And, first of all, I'm queer, so I've got some kudos with you. I'm one of these alternative minorities who is being marginalized, and bigots and all sorts of people are coming onto your channel and you're calling them out, which I appreciate, etc., etc. However, I'm a Christian, I'm also queer, and I don't think the two contradict each other. Oh my God, that is certainly a call worth watching. I'm probably going to cover it. It's about 30 minutes long. But if you're queer and you think that you can call Matt and say that Christianity and, I don't know, homosexuality or whatever, trans issues is compatible with Christianity, think again. The call is not going to go as you might hope that it would. There's going to be no fuzzy, warm chat. No way. So that one was really worth watching. But I was disappointed with the way that the Line compiled this compendium or compilation. They seem to be mainly long calls. A lot of them are very boring, not really noteworthy at all. And I wouldn't really recommend that you waste your time with it. One of the things that I try to do with my channel is I cherry pick the best calls, squeeze them down, cut out the guff, and obviously try and make it interesting with a few comments of my own, but really save you a lot of time so you don't have to spend hours and hours trawling through for good calls. So yeah, a bit disappointed. I wouldn't really recommend that you watch that. So okay, let's go through what's been happening. I've been told that, yeah, I've had quite a few, I don't know, I suppose a lot of you would call them trolls, leaving comments on my channel. I have been told that as my channel gets more popular, I will see more of these trolling users. I wouldn't particularly say my channel's getting more popular, but by God, I'm certainly getting a lot more trolls, as you might want to call them. To me, a troll is somebody who's not sincerely coming onto my channel to engage, somebody who's maybe being a bit excessively tribalistic and just simply trying to score points over atheists. Yeah, that would probably be a troll. Somebody who's not really got goodwill for a proper discussion, somebody who's being dishonest. That's a troll. Now, I know that some users, some who've got channels, they will just delete or hide users without even responding to them when they see that. And maybe I should do the same, because it gets a bit time consuming to engage with these trolls, and I probably shouldn't do it. But one of the maybe attractions of my channel is that if you leave a comment, quite often you might get a comment back from me, and a lot of channels are so big that it's not really possible for channel owners to actually do that. So, however, I must admit quite a few of these trolling comments are coming in, and what I tend to do with them now, if they come in early enough before the bulk of traffic has hit the video, I like to pin those comments and let you guys deal with them. Then I won't have to. So, but let me just go through some of those sort of trolling comments. Yeah, so I did one video on near-death experience. So somebody came on about near-death experience. I think it was a call with Matt. I can't remember what the upshot of it was, but his claims were dismissed. And somebody on and came and said, he said something to the effect, well, I'm an atheist and I think that NDEs are a thing. I think they do point to life after death. Now, when somebody comes on and says, oh, I'm an atheist and NDEs definitely point to life after death, I'm a bit suspicious that this is really an atheist. I think that it's somebody who's trying to get some credibility, trying to get some traction for a view which really does not stand up to science or critical thinking. And I think I pinned that comment, and I think I left a comment saying, laugh out loud, you sound, you're probably a theist. And then some other people chimed in, and I got the idea from his comments generally that he was a theist. Some of the things that he was saying, I just couldn't really, they're not really consistent with a sort of atheistic way of thinking, with critical thinking. And he was assuming too much about the evidence from NDEs, accepting anecdotal evidence and all that kind of thing, and making unjustified conclusions. Of course, there are dumb atheists out there who are atheists for bad reasons, but I've seen this before. And yeah, so I said, yeah, I commented to somebody else who'd left a comment, and I said he's probably a theist. And then he came back with one final snarky comment, and he said, you're straw manning me. I'm not a theist. I already said I'm an atheist. Straw man, haha, checkmate. Now come on. When did you ever hear atheists checkmating another atheist? It's a typical thing that Christians will say. You can't explain no transitional forms. Checkmate, haha, atheists. You've got to laugh. So I can't remember what I did with that one. I think I banned him after that. I just hid his comments. I didn't want to waste any more time on him. But who are they trying to kid? Why come on saying, oh, I'm an atheist and I believe in near-death experience, I believe in reincarnation, etc., etc. Why? Or I'm an atheist, but I've got to admit that the New Testament is very historical, and I can't think how else there could have been an empty tomb, and there could have been these witnesses, and the apostles died agonizing deaths. So even me as an atheist finds that quite good evidence. So, I mean, come on, stop it, will you? Stop doing that. It's really irritating. You're not fooling anybody. What else have we got? Yeah, so I've been accused of tribalism. Yeah, because I did a call where somebody came on, talked to Matt, and he said to Matt, you're being super demanding. I'm not prepared to state my evidence. And Matt hung up on him, because if somebody comes on and says, oh, I'm not prepared to say why I believe in God, and I mean, what's the point in coming on in the first place? So he hung up on him. Well, actually, it came across that it's not that he didn't want to, but it's that he wasn't able. He was humming and hawing, and he couldn't really say why he believes in God. And in the end, he just left it. And I made the comment, I laughed, and I was probably being a bit hyperbolic here, but I said, another theist who can't justify what he believes, he can't provide one single good reason why he believes in God, and he's just made theists look like idiots. And somebody accused me of being tribalistic. I don't know. Because every time a theist comes on, yet another theist who can't provide any good evidence for the existence of God, yet another one. In a way, they are all on the same team. They do all sort of represent each other, and they just more and more make theists look like idiots. And no, I stand by that. Matt has also, this particular user said, oh, Matt doesn't generalize, but Actually, Matt has generalized. I heard him only the other day saying, well, actually, not all Christians, but most, more than 50%, most are arrogant, etc., etc., etc. No, so it's not just me. But that's because we've listened to thousands of calls and we're still waiting for convincing evidence. And every time a new theist comes on, makes another bad argument or won't make an argument, in a way, they do kind of represent all the others. And when I say they just made theists look like idiots, and theists feel like this as well. I was watching a program about, I don't know, an apologist who said he was sitting there and he was watching a theist who was on a British television show. It wasn't a sort of apologist, counter apologist show. It was just a sort of chat show. And somebody, oh yeah, I remember what it was. Yeah, he said, oh, so the host said, oh, so you're a Christian. You just believe out of blind faith, do you? And the Christian said, yes, that's right. At least he's honest. Anyway, this apologist said that when he saw this, he picked up his shoe and threw it at the television. Now, so in a way, you see, even Christians who are out there, when other Christians are rationalizing or explaining why they believe, like it's just blind faith, they are kind of all sort of representing each other. And because there have been no good reasons presented for the faith, when another one comes on and can't justify it yet again, in a way, they do make all the others look like idiots who haven't got any good reason to believe. Sorry, that's how it is. You can call that tribalistic if you want. I'm just being realistic about it. So let's move on. Yeah, my critique of Matt. Yeah, so a lot of people disagreed with me. I said that on one call he was a bit too premature and a bit too strict with the caller because he said about, what was it? Can't remember what the topic was, but the soul. Prove the soul. Give me a definition and provide your evidence. And the caller didn't really want to do that. He wanted to do it another way. And he started to say that just like I can't prove that music exists, I can't prove that the soul exists, and the soul is kind of an analogy with music. And it's a shame Matt didn't pick up on that, because there's a lot we can say about music. We can demonstrate music, we can play it. We've got notation, we've got musical instruments, we've got musicians, and it's not a good analogy at all. And it's unfortunate that Matt did not pick up on that. He let that go because he could have used that as a starting point, so it went wrong. But I accept that a lot of you thought he did deal with that call properly. I think that he could have sort of been a bit more attentive and maybe converted it, because when people call in claiming to have evidence for the soul, I like to see them fully dealt with and sent away, realizing they've got no good reason to believe in the soul. And it didn't happen with this call, unfortunately. But I accept what those of you who felt he did, that he was fair. That's another point of view. I like to provide another perspective because it's part of what I do on this channel, but not just for the sake of it, because I really think that Matt could do with a bit of constructive criticism and either accept it or reject it. Not that he'll ever listen to me. He probably doesn't even know that I exist, but that doesn't mean to say that I'm not going to provide these commentaries. Nitpicking on really inconsequential things. So yeah, there was another NDE caller. He said that it was quite a good call actually. He said that he'd been in he hadn't been in hospital. He was a teacher in a school. He had a heart attack. There happened to be somebody in the classroom next door who was trained in CPR. Plus they had a defibrillator on site that had been installed. And he said, not more than 3 months ago. And I misspoke and I repeated that and said I wasn't sure, not less than 3 months. Or not more than, and then I said, well, within the last 3 months. I put it like that. So I got that wrong. I said not more than I said not less than when he said not more than. So I just misspoke. I mean, look, I'm 58 years old, and occasionally I sort of lose concentration for a fraction of a second. So please don't nitpick me on inconsequential rubbish like that. I got it right when I said within the last 3 months. I paraphrased it. And somebody nitpicked me and said, "Oh, you should be more attentive. You shouldn't be making videos out there if don't waste my time like that." And he said, this same user said Matt was aware enough to say that the regulations apply maybe in Texas as far as he knows, but maybe not in the rest of the USA. You're in Britain; they may well apply in Britain, but don't generalize. Don't generalize about this. Now, I actually said myself that he wasn't listening to the call. I actually said that in schools and colleges, regulations are such that there's usually somebody trained with CPR on site, and there's usually a defibrillator. And then I added a footnote to that, and I said, well, at least in the UK. Just as Matt said, well, as far as I know, in Texas, because we both realized, of course, as an afterthought, that it may not be the case in all educational institutions. So you idiot who nitpicked me on that, you didn't listen to the video. If you're going to critique me, at least make sure you've listened to the. In fact, I find that a lot of the time people don't listen properly to the video because they critique me on something and they've not even listened to what I've said. So no, I, like Matt, also added a footnote to that. Maybe you didn't listen to the whole of what I said and you just went to the end. But no, I did say, well, at least in the UK, because I realized in America, and indeed I found out in America, a lot of schools and colleges don't have this regulation, but I still don't find it remarkable that somebody trained with CPR happened to be on site and they had a defibrillator installed, within the last 3 months. And this man is claiming that's God lining up the stars, stacking the odds in his favor. I think it's just completely absurd. Why do you stick to relevant things? Why do you nitpick on inconsequential things? Go for the core of what I'm saying rather than, these sort of irrelevant things, or at least get them right. Okay, so, we've had somebody else leaving a comment. Yesterday, in fact, I made this video. A Christian came on and said, he started talking about quantum mechanics, how the double slit experiment or, quantum mechanics had shown that a particle was only there when observed, and God might only be there when observed, and that's why he created man, so man could observe him and make sure that God exists. And I question whether this was the case. Had he interpreted the physics properly, it didn't really sound likely that if nobody existed, I presume the universe would still exist, it would still be here, particles would still be here, and I felt that maybe he hadn't understood something correctly about the physics. And believe me, I'm reading this book. It's just a dumbed down version, of physics. And I get completely lost on all the particle stuff, the particle physics, the neutrinos, what happens when a proton strikes an electron. And, I must admit, I get completely lost at that kind of thing. I can't internalize it and memorize it at all. And even if I do, I don't really fully understand the consequences of it. And when people start talking about quantum mechanics, it's been said, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't. So if somebody phones in and says, particles disappear when they're not being watched, so, God exists, it sounds to me like complete rubbish. And so somebody left a comment saying, they said it's difficult to prove God with quantum mechanics, especially when people don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm not convinced that it's possible to prove God with quantum mechanics. And this comment seemed to leave open that possibility that it is possible. And then he went on to say that, unfortunately, not many atheists are well clued up on science. And if they looked at the origins of life, and he mentioned EVO, I looked that up, and God-guided evolution. So accept evolution, but it's too complex to have got going on its own. God must have guided it. And first self-replicating molecules, virtually impossible. So God must have used his magic finger and got that going as well. Therefore, this is proof of the existence of God. And I pinned that comment for a little while, and then I ended up deleting, actually, because he said that it was another one who was saying, when I start talking science, atheists don't know what they're talking about, and they go off running, squealing with their tail between their legs. To me, that's a trolling comment. It's a provocative comment, and I ended up deleting that one. So no proof for the existence of God there. And so let me move on. Oh yeah, this poll which I put up, atheism is a religion. It's been. I've had some theists saying to me, You spend so much time in religion, Stuart, you don't realize it. If only you wouldn't be so arrogant and proud, you would realize that a God exists. You might as well. You spend so much time, you spend so much time in religion. To me, my sort of atheism and my online atheism, there are other things which online I'm interested in too, which I also spend quite a bit of time on, and atheism is just one of them. It just so happens that I happen to be interested in this and I find it amusing. And believe it or not, but when I'm walking past a church and people are in there praying to their God, to me it's a bit like walking past a building which is devoted to worship of Father Christmas or Santa Claus, or Gandalf from Lord of the Rings or whatever, Harry Potter. That's what it's like to me. Right? I mean, get that right. You guys out there, you Christians, I mean, to me, it's like worshipping fairies. It's like worshipping, some sort of magical character or Peter Pan or something like that. And I mean, I would have the same curiosity about people who worship Thor and pagans, which I have. And I've got other online interests. Atheism happens to be one of them. And I mean, I'm interested in certain things, and nobody would say about some of the other things I'm interested in, like music, for example. Certain branches of music I've got a passion for. Nobody would claim me of, saying, "Oh, Stuart, you're so much interested in the classical era of music. Why don't you go the whole hog and just worship it as a religion?" I mean, it would sound absolutely ridiculous. But because it just so happens, I find Christians, and I find their arguments, I find their reasons for belief. It would be, and I would find it hilarious if I would have as much interest in a branch of counter apologetics against people who believe in Santa Claus. And if there were phone-in shows for people who believe in Santa Claus, I would also be tuning in and listening to that and laughing. And you wouldn't accuse me of, "Oh, you might as well go the whole hog and just, I mean, you're stuck in religion too, Stuart, as well. You might as well. Why don't you just go the whole hog and believe in Santa Claus?" I don't think that you theists out there, if any of you are watching, how you realize how atheists see you guys. No, atheism's not a religion. Of course it's not. It's absolutely ridiculous at the core of a religion. And I appreciate there are sort of different definitions for religions, but at the core of it is a faith, a belief in something which cannot be proven, and more specifically, a belief in something which is beyond the material world, like a god, like a power, a higher power, and perhaps life after death, something like that, or some kind of cosmic divine plan and divine purpose. That's a religion. And if there are people who believe such things, there are bound to be counter apologists, just like with racists. With racists, there are people who counter racism. There are people who counter neo-fascists. And you wouldn't say about a channel which is anti-fascist that, "Oh, you're fascist too. It's just that, you're too proud and you're too arrogant to admit it." It would be absurd. So for whatever faction there is, for whatever belief system out there, whatever ideologies there's going to be out there, there's also going to be a counter movement. There's also going to be somebody critiquing that movement, particularly in the case of religion or fascism or whatever, because it has real world consequences. And so you're not saying that counter-fascists are religions. You're not saying that, people who don't believe in veganism are religions. And I suppose you're not saying that vegans are religions either. Just because these people are communities. There are communities of video gamers. You're not classifying them as religions. So to say that atheism is a religion, atheism is just responding to theist claims. That's all. Outside of my flat, I'll leave my atheism behind me, really. I've got friends, people that I know, and I never talk about my atheism with them. It just never crops up. I know people. I went to a party only last week, met lovely people, and some of them may be Christians, some of them may not. And I had a good time with them. We talked about, and religion never cropped up. I don't wear my atheist badge wherever I go. And outside of my channel, really, and some reading that I do, I never really even much think about it. Whereas if you're a Christian, you're all the time going around thinking, and you're praying to God. You've got faith that somebody is watching you from up there. No, don't be silly. They're not remotely the same. So yeah, I did that poll. I think 90% in the end, of course, predictably, because it's an atheist channel, said no, of course it's not. And 10%, which happens to be about the number of percentage of theists that watch my channel, said yes, atheism is a religion. But I honestly don't think it is. Now, I found a church of atheism in Canada. I'm going to be featuring that because they actually went to the Supreme Court in Canada, and to get tax-free status, they claimed to be a religion. That was rejected. So I'll be covering that story soon. Quick word about Darth Dawkins. So yeah, I've been on Clubhouse, which is a kind of it's a kind of YouTube without any images. You can go on there. It's a bit like a Discord, and there are anti-Darth Dawkins people on there, and there are whole shows which are devoted to talking about all the tricks and that Darth Dawkins gets up to. Somebody was saying, I tuned in yesterday to a recorded show. Somebody said that Darth Dawkins had. What had he done? He'd picked up the identity of somebody online and he'd parodied it or something. And it turned out to be a young man who died or committed suicide or something. And they were saying what a basically reprehensible scumbag he is. Yeah, well, that was about 3 or 4 hours long. I just tuned in briefly to listen to what they were talking about. Don't they realize, these people that are doing these shows, they're just pumping him up. They're just feeding his ego, because how important he must feel that people out there have, they are spending time talking about him and what a load of rubbish he is, what a confrontational, narcissistic individual he is. And then I went on to another show where Darth Dawkins was actually talking, and I thought, I'll go into the middle of the show and see what he's talking about, because I'd love to hear him talking about something other than this. What is your foundational principle for everything that exists? I thought maybe I can find him talking about something else. I literally, it's like opening the Bible, a particular page, and pointing it to it. And you're not going to believe this. I literally landed on him saying, what is your foundational principle for everything that exists? And, I couldn't believe it. And yeah, he just does go on about that all the time. What else? Theists posing as atheists. Yeah, I've done that. What else? Just a moment, please. Critique of Matt. Oh, yeah. When I critique Matt, there are people who say, get your own show, Stuart. Do your own phone-in show. I mean, it's like, the right of criticism in our liberal Western democracies is sacrosanct. It's such an important thing. I mean, it's like saying that because I critique Rishi Sunak for his policies, the Prime Minister of the UK, be a Prime Minister, Stuart. Go out and, become a politician yourself if you're going to critique politicians. It's stupid. We've got to, it's so important to be able to critique others, and I'm open to criticism. And of course, I get criticism on my channel of myself, and sometimes I think it's justified, other times I don't. But I won't say to people who critique me, get your own channel, do what I do and see what it's like. It's so... Well, there's no point commenting on that further. It's such an absurd point of view. What else? Okay, and then just a couple of more things. I'm going to round this off. It has been going nearly half an hour. Yeah, so a couple of books I'm reading. I didn't realise that Michael Dine is a theist. I bought this book because, I failed miserably with Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time. Got lost with it. Okay, physics never was a good point with me, but still, about halfway through, in the chapter entitled Why Is There Something Rather Than Nothing, he starts saying that, he's talking about matter and antimatter, and that if there were equivalent amounts, which there should be by the law of symmetry in the universe, nothing would exist because antimatter would cancel out matter. And fortunately, there's just slightly more matter than antimatter, allowing stars, etc. to exist. And he's saying that if we didn't have a scientific reason for this, we would have to appeal to a deity. I couldn't believe what I was reading. And I thought maybe he was just sort of being a bit tongue-in-cheek about it, that, this is particularly the God of the Gaps argument that theists go down. And then in another a few paragraphs later, he mentions something else where he's saying that, oh yeah, and if we can't solve that, we'll have to invoke a deity again. And then he talks about Sakharov and how Sakharov kind of solved it. And then I made some comments on my channel about this, and somebody said, oh yes, Michael Dine, he's a theist, he's a chairman of the Jewish something or other. And yeah, I mean, he's serious that if we encounter something we can't explain, then at least for now, we're going to have to invoke a deity. Looks like I bought the wrong book, doesn't it? But, I can't believe that. But I mean, as a contrast to this guy, Matthew Cobb, he's a British zoologist. He's written this absolutely brilliant book on the history of how we've come to understand the brain, what the brain is, what it does, etc., and how we're trying to get to grips with what consciousness is. And he starts off in the very first chapter saying that science has told us about the brain that no matter how much you might want to think it's not the case, but consciousness appears to be entirely a product of the brain and something which dies when the brain dies. There's no consciousness left when the brain dies. And no matter how much you might want to think that it can survive death, the science doesn't really seem to point that way. I mean, that's what I want to read because it's completely reasonable, and I don't see that science has got any justification for appealing to a deity or appealing to anything really that goes beyond the material world. So I'll have to be careful in future with the books that I buy, because if theists are writing on science and appealing to theism in these books, then to me it kind of reflects on the credibility of the scientist. So I think that's about it, really. What else is there to say? Well, nothing. I think that's about it. Yeah. Okay. That's my roundup for this week, half an hour. For those of you who are still with me, thank you very much for staying with me for the whole of this video, and would like to hear your comments on anything that I've said. So I'll be back again next week, probably with another roundup video. And in the meantime, I'll be doing some more material, commentaries, and I'll be featuring that Church of Atheism in Canada. Bye for now.